Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei becomes a Holy Knight of the Dragon Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Nefarious Doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Issei used his boosted power to lift Mjolnir into the air and hit Loki with all of his might. Before Loki disappeared into the portal, he glared at the dragon hybrid and noticed that Fenrir was almost dead. Tch. Useless dog. Loki quickly chanted a spell, and a portal opened where Issei and Fenrir were. Rias and the others could only stare as Issei was being pulled into the portal with a god-killing dog. Loki, seeing the events transpire, laughed and said, "This portal will take the red dragon away from here, and the only way for this spell to be cast is if the dragon of dreams and Office combined their power. I was fortunate to find the only copy of this spell in Valhalla, where not even that useless Valkyrie would look. Now watch as your precious dragon vanishes. Ha 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 ha. Farewell Issei Haidu." The portal closes and Issei and Fenrir are gone to who knows where. Britannia Forest. Issei woke up with a big headache and noticed two things. 1. He was not back home or with his girls, and 2. He saw a certain dog on the grass, sleeping, while using his legs as a pillow for his head. Issei thought this was a regular dog rather than a god-killer dog. He pat the dog on the head and it woke up nuzzling him. Drake was awake and checked on his partner. "Issei, are you alright?" "Yes, I'm fine, but where are we?" The dragon shook his head. "I don't know, but it appears we're in another world." "Oh, by the way, you're probably wondering why Fenrir is acting friendly." Issei nodded and Drake sighed and said, "After the portal sucked us in, Fenrir grabbed us and gently placed us on its back. I noticed the evil pieces left you as we were traveling and must have gotten sent back home. Luckily, I was able to save you by making your body a hybrid of human and dragon. So now, your body is 85% dragon and 15% human. The new changes are that your new strength, speed, endurance, magic potential, and you also seem to unlock a hidden power within you. Unfortunately, your body is more vulnerable to dragon slayers, but you should be strong against mid-tiered dragon slayers. Fenrir has become close to you in the short time because of your kindness and wants to be your familiar. Do you accept?" Issei looked at the dog before him and decided to keep him alright. "So how do I do this?" "Just place your hand on his head and pour your magic into Fenrir." Issei did as instructed and Fenrir accepted the pact. Fenrir poofed in a thick of smoke and instead of a dog, a woman took his place. Said woman was a tall girl with red hair that reached the back of her neck, and her hair was in 2 braids that reached to her middle back. Issei and Drake were shocked until the girl looked at her master and said, "Master." She glumped him and smothers his face in her new breasts. The terrifying dog woman licked Issei's cheek like a dog. It tickles Issei until he noticed 2 things. 1, she's in 2, she has 2 dog ears on top of her head. He rubbed the ear and she liked it and whimpered like a dog who wants affection. Issei was brought out of his daydream by Drake and noticed that she needed clothes and fast. Issei told the woman to stay and he left to find some clothes until he saw a carriage with a big hole on the side and noticed that the man inside was dead and so was his maid. He saw that the money was left behind and the clothes, so bandits hadn't come yet. Despite going against his moral code, he grabbed the money and found some spare clothes that would make him seem like a common traveler and his partner as his maid fellow adventurer. He went back and saw her waiting in the same spot as before. "Looks like she is good with tricks." He laughs a little and gave her the new clothes. She struggled a bit with the maid top, so Issei helped her. She also had a cap on her head to cover her dog ears. "Master, what do you think?" Issei was finding it hard to believe that this was the god-killer dog. Then again, he has met powerful people act like fools. Azazel and Serziches appeared in his mind doing all sorts of crazy nonsense. Issei pat her on the head and said, "I love it, but why are you a girl? I thought you were a boy." She looked sad but explained that dummy Loki didn't look at my gender. He just assumed I was a male because of my so-called sons. Personally, I wanted to bite his head off, but I couldn't because of the mind control placed on me. But after you beat me, I was able to think for myself, and I am not saddened by Hadi and Skoll's death. They weren't my children, just abominations created by that monster. I would like a new name. If you don't mind." Issei saw the look in her eyes and thought of a name until it clicked. Lupus Regina. "You won't be just my familiar. You will become my partner and I wouldn't mind trying to get to know you a little bit. If you don't mind, that is." Lupus Regina jumped on top of him and kissed him while saying, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Issei was picturing her tail wagging like crazy right now. He picked her up and sat her down before taking out the map he got from the carriage. "Alright, according to this map we're in a world called Britannia and the main kingdoms are Lions and Camelot. From what I was able to find out from the journal that was in the carriage, there is magic here and people called Holy Knights. They defend the people with their powers, and apparently there are only 5 races here. The giants, fairies, humans, angels, and demons. But the demons and the angels have been gone for a while, and the giants and the fairies are in their own part of the country. It appears they aren't on friendly terms with human. So first things first, we need a base of operations and information on what's going on. Luckily we're near a village with a tavern called the Boar's Hat. I heard it from the villagers with my dragon hearing. So ready to roll. Lupus Regina nodded and said, let's go Issei. Issei smiles at her happy nature and makes a note to get her a weapon in town. Boar's Hat. Meliodas has seen many things in his lifetime, but this certainly took the cake. He was serving his customers as usual with Hawk as the cleanup until the door opened and saw a man who looked 18, wearing a thin but durable set of red armor with a sword that radiates holy energy at his side and a shield on his back. His companion was a girl wearing a maid outfit and had a scepter that had a spike circlet on her back. The two looked strong and thought they might have heard of his friends, but the kid in armor made him suspicious. He seemed friendly, so he approached them and took their orders. They made some small talk, and some would say they're dating, which reminded him of a certain giant and fairy he knew. People were chatting around him about the 7 deadly sins and how one was spotted. Suddenly, a being in rusted purple armor scared almost everyone, except for 2, and they all ran out of the tavern, leaving 4 people and a pig, wondering who that knight was. They were shocked when they learned that the knight was a girl. Meliodas took her to the spare room, while Issei asked if he could use the kitchen to make something for the girl. You can cook? Meliodas asked. Issei nodded. My mother taught me and Lupus can help out as well. MMHMM. Said Lupus Regina. Issei and Lupus were making a steak and a small salad for the girl. A few minutes later, Meliodas and Hawk came down with a white-haired girl with blue eyes and her hair covering her right eye. Issei and Lupus introduces themselves, and Meliodas said they're new members of the Boar's Hat. Meliodas put a finger up and grabbed them to speak to them. Listen, I could use some help in the kitchen. I'm a terrible cook and I could use your help. In exchange for food and board, tell me who you really are. I'm not a bad person, nor am I a good guy. I'm just a normal guy running a tavern. Lupus looked at Issei. What do you think, Issei? Issei looks at Lupus and nods. Very well, but if you betray us then you're getting a beat down. Meliodas just smiles and nods in understanding. They made some small talk, and Elizabeth spoke about her quest to find the 7 deadly sins so she can save her kingdom. Issei and Lupus were disgusted when they learned that the holy knights that were sworn to protect the kingdom and its people betray their own king. It reminded them of Chaos Brigade and the hero factions. The heroes claim that the supernatural shouldn't rule the earth and that the humans must reign. If Cao Cao were here, he'd be rolling in laughter at these knights and try to recruit them. Unfortunately, a knock at the door came and voices were heard outside. Attention, the rusted knight is here. Open the door or we will use force. Elizabeth was worried, but Issei told her to be quiet and whispered to Lupus, use complete invisibility and get her out of here. Lupus nodded and Meliodas gave them a thumbs up for a solid plan. Hawk put on the helmet of the rusted armor, and as the door opened Hawk came out and said, I am the feared rusted knight. Fear me. The knights were furious and were about to draw their swords until a soldier outside said, hey, 2 people are running out back. The soldiers saw Lupus and Elizabeth run into the forest, then the soldiers chased after them. Hawk and Issei ran to them before Hawk knocked a guy off the cliff, and Issei looked up to see Lupus in a tree with Elizabeth in her arms. Bridal carry style. Issei smirks and says, Lupus, I'm hurt. I thought you only had eyes for me. Leaving me for a woman, how cruel. Lupus smiles and leaps down before placing Elizabeth on the ground and hugging him. I do love you, but I had to carry the princess. Forgive me. Issei looks at her and says, for a kiss. Lupus closes her eyes and both of them close in on each other until the part of the cliff falls to the ground. Meliodas came down to help them. The top of the cliff was a burly man saying confirmed 5 unfortunate deaths. The knights were pleading with their boss until he threatened them by saying perhaps I should write down 9 unfortunate deaths instead. Any takers? None spoke until Meliodas leaped out of the fallen cliffside with Elizabeth and Hawk, while Issei was flying with his dragon wings and Lupus Regina was in his arms, glaring at the man for interrupting their moment and for attacking them. The knight glared at them. How dare you disrespect your deaths and leave without my permission? No one asked for your permission, said Hawk. He looks at the girl with Meliodas and says, that earring, it bears the family crest of the royal family. That points out that you're Princess Elizabeth of Lions. Everyone looks at her and says, you're a princess. There's a reward for bringing you in alive or dead. So. He draws his sword. Issei and Lupus get ready to fight. Conclusion. Accidental death. The blade flowed wide as it cut away the forest, and Meliodas with Elizabeth were on the ground, and both Issei and Lupus Regina charged at the knights for attacking their friends. Lupus dealt with the knights while Issei faced Twigo. Issei and the leader clashed blades. You would strike one of the princesses of lions. Are you mad? Twigo clashes with Issei. It doesn't matter, I'll take the princess and then I'll kill you and the boy. As for the maid, I think I'll have fun with her. Issei had his head down and his body began to glow red as he prepared to attack. He pushed Twigo away and his sword began to ignite itself in flames. The holy energy inside of the sword flared like fire and Issei felt a name appear in his mind. Use my power. Show this fool that he isn't our superior. My name is. Issei heard it and his body began to grow as the flames became hotter and Twigo saw this. What is this power? Issei's sword was temporarily replaced with a powerful battle axe and he lifted the sword above his head. Twigo felt fear enter his entire body as he looked at the flames. Issei glares at him and said 2 words that sealed his fate. Now die. He swung and Twigo didn't even move as the fire engulfed him. Meanwhile, Lupus made quick work of the knights. Wow, those guys were hardly a workout. I didn't even have a chance to use magic. She said with a pouty face. She looked around for Issei and wondered where he was. I hope he's okay fighting that fat dude. The voice rang out, hey Lupus Regina. You've seen Issei. She looked to see Meliodas and shook her head. I haven't seen him at all since he fought Twigo. Boom. Twigo was sent between them into the rocks and his armor was nearly destroyed along with his body covered in 3rd-degree burns. Meliodas and Lupus Regina turns to Issei coming out and he was different. He was a giant while wielding a powerful sword engulfed in fire and his body radiated power, confidence, fire and a slight touch of arrogance. He saw Lupus Regina and his fire left him. He then hugged her and Lupus felt warm and relaxed just being around him. I'm happy you're alright. I'm happy you're back, Issei. She kissed him on the cheek and enjoyed cuddling with him. Meliodas just stood there watching the two until Twigo released his sword and charged at them with an attack, but after the attack he was cut instead. Meliodas has a serious look on his face as he looks at him and slashed the middle of the attack. I'll deal with you. Lupus Regina looked at Meliodas and was shocked. Whoa. Issei, did you see that? Issei had his dragon eyes out. I did. In the middle of the attack he used that broken blade to cut into the attack and send it right back at owner, but with double the power. That must be his magical power. Lupus was amazed at the thorough examination, then turned back to the fight and asked what about that guy? The opponent. What's his power? Meliodas chimes in, it allows him to extend the range of his attack to a certain distance. However, he has to pour his magic into a weapon in order for it to work. Twigo was shocked that his power was found out before looking at Meliodas and said, wait a minute, I recognize you now. But how could you look the same way you did 10 years ago? Meliodas readied his sword and swung it at Twigo, covering him in a white light and sent him flying into the sky. This power is that of the legend. Meliodas' arm was extended and a dragon tattoo was on his arm, leader of the 7 deadly sins. Meliodas, the dragon sin of wrath. Issei and Lupus walked to him and soon Elizabeth joined in the group. Meliodas looks at her and says, well, you found your first sin. I've been trying to find them because I have some business that involves them, so I'm ready to help. Issei chimed in, you can count us in. Both Meliodas and Elizabeth were surprised by this. Why? Issei said, well, we were seen with you and no doubt Twigo is still alive, so he'll report Lupus and myself. So it's best we join you, and besides you need a chef. Elizabeth and Lupus Regina laughed at this while Meliodas poured and said, not my fault. A large green pig came out of the forest with a tavern on top of it and Hawk lowered the ladder. Come on you guys. Time's a wasting. They laugh before climbing aboard and Meliodas look back at Issei and say, I think it's time we have that talk about you too. Issei smiles and prepares drinks for them and sat down at the table. Well, it all started after I was killed by my ex-girlfriend. Issei has explained his life story to his new teammates. Each of them had a different reaction when he finished his tale. Lupus had a content look on her face and hugged him gently while saying sorry. Issei leaned in and enjoyed the warmth from the werewolf. Elizabeth was in awe and fear for all that this person had to go through. How could an 18-year-old boy have such a big responsibility and still put a smile on his face? I can't do anything but cry and need others to help me accomplish my goals. I can't do anything to help, but still he was a human and went through so much. But now it seems like he's happy being with us, reminds me of my family when we would have dinner. Meliodas pondered about the many girls he mentioned and wondered how big they are, while Hawk was amazed by this guy. You're awesome. With us fellow animal warriors together, we can conquer anything. Issei smiles and Meliodas looked and said, you've been through a lot. I'm surprised of how you take upon so much on your back and yet you're still able to put a smile and be a pillar of support for those dear to you. I respect that. I really do. Welcome to the team. Issei shakes his hand and asks. Thank you. So any idea where the others are by any chance? We are going to need their help, and could I ask for a favor? I want to learn magic. When I was fighting Twigo, I felt a power within me. You look like you've seen it before, could you help me learn to use it? Meliodas nodded and said, I'll help, but it will be hard. The power you have is no joke. It actually once belonged to an old friend of mine who was a human and the former Lion Sin of Pride. Issei punches his fists together. Just hearing it makes me more excited. Let's do it. Meliodas liked his determination and says alright, but we'll talk later about training. For now I have an idea where we could find one of the sins. He pulls out a map of lions and points to a patch of forest and says this forest is known as the Forest of White Dreams. There's a massive fog there and it's so strong it can't be blown away by any form of magic. It's also the perfect place to hide from someone. So that's where we're headed. By our course and speed we should be there by tomorrow morning. Meliodas heads to the kitchen and checks supplies, food, and alcohol. Elizabeth and Lupus talk on the sidelines while Issei and Hawk talk to each other. So Lupus, why do you like Issei so much? I mean, you kiss him a lot and are very close to him. Lupus puts down her water that she got earlier and looked at Elizabeth and said, well, at first we were enemies but after he knocked some sense into me after I bit him, I was able to wake up from the mind control and got a look at his memories. Granted he is a pervert, but he also has a kind heart, an indomitable will, a roaring determination to get stronger, and a lust for power and women. From the memories, he was actually called the incarnation of the sin of lust. I believe he is lustful for both power to protect the ones he loves and to feel the love of the women he loves. When I woke up from my sleep, I was drawn to his aura and I really liked being close to him. It made me warm and safe. So I'll follow him no matter what. Elizabeth was touched by the confession and grabbed one of her hands. I'll support you. Lupus was surprised and made a mischievous look on her face. My Elizabeth. Never knew you were so forward. Sorry, but I only like guys and there's only one I'm sticking to. Elizabeth blushes and waved her hand in the air while trying to tell Lupus Regina it wasn't like that. The wolf girl was enjoying her teasing until she was hit on the head by Issei. Ow. A large bump appeared on her head as Issei scolded her. Be nice, Lupus. I'm alright with a little teasing, but don't take it too far. Understood. Lupus just nodded. Meliodas walks over to Issei. Hey Issei, we can get started on your training. Issei was excited and asked what they were going to do for starters. Their power is known as sunshine. It allows you to control fire and your power increases depending on the time of day. The downside is as the sun sets, your power begins to drop till nightfall where the power is gone temporarily. At noon is when the full power of sunshine is used, but you can only hold it for 60 seconds, any longer would require you to use another source of energy to keep it running. So what I want you to do is to try and call Rita to you. If you have Eskener's power, then Rita will respond to you. Issei walked outside and sat on top of the head in a meditative position. He breathed in and out deeply as he pictured the sun in his body. Then the man who was a giant was looking at him and smiled with a gentle look on his face. He held out his hand and a giant ornamental axe with a blade shaped like a crescent moon, similar to that of a monk's spade, appeared in his hand. Issei was amazed by the sight of the axe and admired it from where he was. The axe also features two golden protrusions, one larger than the other, with the white tips of a spear. The longer one is in the middle at the top of the axe, and the smaller one is on the opposite of the blade of the axe. The handle is dark blue, and it features a golden semicircular guard with 4 golden spikes on it. Its design specs and distribution of weight are, likely intentionally, off. Most of the weight is concentrated in the head, leaving it off balance, and even more difficult to wield than its impressive weight would already make it. The giant held it out for him. Call her to you. I believe you can put this power to better use than I could. Prove to me that you are a dragon and a human. Issei smiles at the giant and held his out and grabbed the axe. The information flowed into him as the axe burned brightly like an inferno. Issei woke up from his mediation and stands up. Hey Hawk's mom. Can we stop here for a second? I'll be quick. The giant pig roared as she slowly came to a stop and Issei summoned his balance breaker before summoning his wings. Lupus and the others watch as he takes off into the sky. Issei stopped as soon as he was a good distance away and breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. Way up here, I don't have to worry about holding back. He held his hand out into the air and shouted. Heed my will, Rita. In the kingdom of lions, the scared axe was resting in the treasure chambers, bound by chains until it began to glow in a fiery aura. The chains began to melt and burn as the axe became hotter and hotter. A certain knight was walking past the treasure chambers and heard something banging against the armor and weapons in there. Open the door. Now. The knights helped as they complied, and Hendrickson barely dodged but was grazed as Rita flew in the air and shot out of the castle like an arrow released from the bow. It seems there is someone worthy of its power. Follow that axe and don't let it get away. A magician bowed as they disappeared back into the shadows. She had to make a call to Gilthander and make sure he knew of the situation. Issei heard it and the sky became hotter as Lupus and the others were hit by a massive heat wave. Meliodas brought them inside and shouted. Get down and close your eyes. They got under the tables, and Issei was in the same spot, looking in the direction he knew the axe was coming in. The axe appeared and Issei caught it in his right hand. A pillar of light descended from the sun, and it covered his body. The balance breaker began to shift and transformed into new armor for him. The armor was now similar to Eskener's old armor, but now it was red like blood with the same blue shields on the side, but they seemed to be lighter than the usual dark blue. The armor had a big bright sun on the back of it, and a green gem appeared on the front, with the helm covering his head and only keeping his face revealed to the world. Issei then held the axe in front of him and activated the sealing power to keep all of the excess power within it. Ascalon resonated with the new armor, and Rita responded with the sword until both weapons went into the boosted gear. Issei flew back down and showed his new armor to others, where they were both amazed and surprised by the power that radiated off of him. Issei held his fist out, and Meliodas saw the message in his eyes and nodded. "Let's fight." The two began a good old fist fight that resulted in a draw. At night Issei and Lupus Regina were in their shared bed, while Hawk was making sure Meliodas didn't sneak in Elizabeth's room at night. Issei looked at the woman next to him as she snuggled on his chest and breathed softly as the wolf girl enjoyed the comfortable body heat from Issei. Issei chuckled a bit as he rubbed her head and enjoyed the soft feeling from it. "I do hope we can return home, but I also want to help this kingdom. After all, I promised Eskener I would help his friends on their mission first." He kissed Lupus Regina's head and drifted off to sleep. Lupus then opened her eyes and looked at Issei's lips. She gently kissed them before laying back in the dragon's chest. "Sleep well, Issei." The next day. The Forest of White Dreams. The group of 5 went to the forest, and as soon as they entered, they were trapped by a troublesome mist. Issei tried to disperse the mist with fire breath, but it didn't do a thing. Rita was still inside of the boosted gear, but the issue was that the mist prevented the sun from entering the forest, so Issei couldn't use the full power of the sunshine. They heard many voices around them. "Leave this place. If not, you'll die. Leave immediately." Issei shouted out. "We don't want to cause you any trouble. We're wondering if there is anyone else living here. We're looking for one of the 7 deadly sins." The voices stopped until a blue imp steps out and sees them. "Did you say the 7 deadly sins? We know of one who lives here. Come with us." The group follows them until Meliodas talked with Issei. "How did you know they would listen to us?" Issei kept walking as he replied. "That simple. These are prankster imps. They are pretty cowardly creatures, and the only power they have is to transform into others temporarily. I had a feeling if one of the sins were hiding here, then they would listen to reason." Meliodas nodded and gave him a thumbs up. A few minutes later the group came upon a giant girl with brown hair and pigtails wearing a giant orange suit sleeping on the ground. The imps walked up to her and said to her. "Lady Diane, wake up. Hey, wake up." Issei was surprised. "Wait, Diane. The Serpent Sin of Envy. Her." He looked at Lupus Regina, who seemed surprised as well, since they didn't expect a sin to look like a human, but giant-sized girl. Diane woke up and Meliodas vanished in an instant. She had an angry look as she looked at him and sighed. "So you holy knights think you're tough. Huh?" Elizabeth shouted to Diane. "Wait, that's Sir Meliodas. Don't eat him." Diane looked at her, then back at Meliodas. "Sir Meliodas, huh? Wait, huh?" Meliodas was unfazed and replied. "Yo, Diane. It's been what, 10 years? Diane glares at him until stars appear in her eyes. "Captain." She then snuggled Meliodas' face to her cheek as she spoke his name like a mantra. "Captain. Captain. Captain." Everyone was shocked until Lupus Regina broke the tension. "Wait, this is the Serpent Sin of Envy. A giant girl with pigtails." Diane woke from her daydream when she saw Hawk. "Oh, Captain, you planned everything too, didn't you? You knew I always loved whole roasted pig." Everyone looked at Hawk. "Hey, wait. Don't eat me." The fire appeared under Hawk, who was tied up and about to be whole roasted. "That's hot." Diane just smiles and says. "Of course, how could I eat you without cooking you first?" Meliodas sniffed the air and said. "Something smells good." Hawk yelled, "Hey, don't ignore me and pretend I'm not here. Do something, will you?" He was untied by Issei, and Lupus Regina blew on the pig's back to cool him down, while Issei tried to heal the burn by applying some burn relief medicine that he had on hand. Diane was busy beating up Meliodas for being a jerk, as she puts it. After a serious beatdown, Meliodas explained the situation to Diane. "So that's why Elizabeth wants to get the sins back together." Diane nodded as she listened to her captain and then looked at Issei. "Hey, is it true that you have Eskener's power?" Issei nodded and conjured a miniature sun in his hand. Diane was shocked until she got up. "Well, I suppose I'll go with you all. You're going to need my help. From now on you have the giant sin of envy's hell." Elizabeth smiles. "We're happy to have you." Diane looks at her and turns her head away. "I'm only going with you all because the captain is with you." The imps cheered as the giant was finally leaving their home until a loud sound came from the forest. "Caw. Caw." The team looks around and we're surprised. Hey Diane, are you sure no one else knew where you were? Diane nodded. There aren't any animals besides imps here, so there's no way there should be any animals. So why? The sound of footsteps approached the group. The fog dispersed to reveal a pink-haired knight with a sword drawn out with lightning radiating from the blade. I am Sir Gilthander, a holy knight of the Kingdom of Lions. He points his sword at Meliodas and glares with all the hatred in his body. Meliodas, it's time to pay for your crimes. Gilthander charged at Meliodas with lightning in his sword, but Meliodas kept dodging all of the swings, but didn't draw his own sword from his back. Lupus Regina looked at Issei. Shouldn't we help him? Issei just shook his head. No. He has to do this himself. I think I know what he's planning, but we'll have to wait. Diane, be ready to attack the knight. Diane glares at Issei. You don't order me around. But fine. She puffed her cheeks and got herself ready for anything. Gilthander kept attacking Meliodas. You killed my father. I will never forgive you, Sir Meliodas. Meliodas kept dodging until Gilthander got behind him and whispered in his ear. I am now stronger than the 7 deadly sins. Meliodas' eyes widen until he feels a blade cut him. Gilthander cuts Meliodas from his left shoulder to his chest and watches as he bleeds out on the ground. If you must know about your comrades. The fox sin of greed is in based prison, and it is rumored that the grisly sin of sloth is dead in Tala village. He looks at the others. Lupus and Diane get ready to fight. Elizabeth and Hawk look nervous, but Issei just stood there with a calm look on his face. Now to take care of the rest. A little tension was between the two groups until a voice breaks it. I'll just check them out. Thanks, little Gil. Everyone, except Issei, was surprised to see Meliodas get up with the cut still fresh and just dusted his shoulder. Gilthander looks at him and realized. You pretended to be defeated so I could give away the location of the other sins. Is that right? Meliodas just laughs with a stupid grin on his face. It was nice to see you again, but I think it's time for you to go. Yo, Diane. Gilthander wouldn't have it and was about to charge at him, but before he could do anything a hand caught him. The captain said it time to leave. She pulled her arm back and she threw him very far, out of the woods. Meliodas looked at her throwing arm. Hey Diane, that gauntlet is ruined. Diane saw this and pouted. Oh. I like that one. Lupus Regina was surprised and asked Issei. Do you think all of them are like this? Issei smiles and says. If they're anything like my old group then definitely. They all have a good laugh before they head back to the boar's head. When they got back to the bar, Meliodas collapsed from the wound, but Elizabeth caught him and brought him to his room to try and heal him. Issei got to work on making some medicine to help close the wound, and Lupus was using healing magic to help with the process. Diane could only watch from outside, and Hawk was waiting for some good news until Issei walked out with Lupus Regina. They rushed and Hawk asked, how is he? Will he be alright? Come on, spill. Issei looks back at Meliodas and sighed. He did lose some blood from the wound, but we were able to stop the bleeding and close the wound thanks to Lupus and her healing magic. However, he will need to rest. I'd say for a few hours before he gets his strength back. So for now, give him some space. Besides, we have bigger problems. He sits on the porch outside with Lupus, and they watch the area as the giant pig walks forward their destination. I think someone was watching us and were keeping an eye on Gilthander. Everyone was surprised at the claim until Issei explained. Remember what Diane said at the forest. There were no creatures other than the prankster imps that lived there, so how could a crow just show up out of the blue? I saw a crow in a tree staring at us, but what caught my attention were the eyes. Hawk asked. The eyes. Everyone didn't understand until Issei explained it to them. Issei nodded. The eyes were not normal. They were red. I think what was watching us was a familiar. Everyone was surprised since they knew that magicians had familiars with them to aid them, but to hear they couldn't even sense this one sent shivers down their spine. Issei looked at them and said. We need to be on our guard. No doubt they have spies hiding among the people of the villages, and the holy knights wouldn't hesitate to make the people fight for them. Elizabeth was shocked until she saw ahead of them. Look at town, you're ahead. And based prison is just north of the town. Everyone saw the giant prison north of the town and made the pig rest a few miles away from the city. Issei saw the map and asked Diane. Is it possible you could throw me to the prison? Diane was surprised until she said. No way. I'm going too. I can't do anything to help the captain right now, but I can help with rescuing Ban. Please let me help. She gave him the puppy dog eyes until he agreed before turning to Lupus Regina. Lupus Regina saw the look in Issei's eyes and said. No way. You're not leaving me to go fight by yourself. I can fight too. Issei saw the looks that both Lupus and Diane gave him until he sighed. Fine, you can come. They cheered and Issei looked at Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you and Hawk look after Meliodas. Don't go into the city. If people recognized you then it would blow your cover. Remember, people don't know that the Princess of Lioness is here. so be careful. We'll be back soon. Lupus and Issei got their armor and weapons on before looking at Diane. You ready? Diane nodded and the three headed out. Elizabeth was surprised and wondered. Why can't I be strong like them? Hawk saw this and decided to cheer her up. Don't worry Elizabeth, they'll be fine. She looks at Hawk. I hope they are, Hawk. I hope they are. Path to based prison. Issei and the team were walking the path to the prison. As they made their way to the prison, Diane and Lupus heard a bell ring, but Issei was safe from the sound thanks to Drake and looked back at the two who just stopped walking. Issei was worried about them until Drake spoke. They aren't themselves. Look at their eyes. Issei saw that Lupus and Diane's eyes were foggy, like they were in a trance-like state. The bell. Drake mentally nodded to his partner. Issei then saw a pink knight with a spider-like helmet walk to them and say, I'm surprised you're still awake. No one's ever been able to break free from the hypnotism. Doesn't matter anyway. You're dead. She pulls out her whip and starts to swing it wildly at him. Issei was dodging the attacks, to him they were slow, and carefully made his way to her. As he got close, he punched her in the face and sent her back a few feet. The helmet breaks to reveal her face. How dare you touch me? A swarm of insects appear above her and they start to shoot acid at him. Issei was using his speed to avoid the acid but got a few burns. Diane heard buzzing and what's stronger than hypnotism? Pure fear. Diane saw the bugs and was freaked out of her mind. Ah. Bugs. She swing her fist wildly at the bugs and creates earth fists to kill the bugs. Issei saw this and grabbed Lupus so she wouldn't be hit by the attacks from the scared giant. The knight wasn't so lucky as she was hit in the gut by an earth punch and was sent into a tree. Ruin was surprised and foolishly gave away his position as he felt someone tap his shoulder. He looked to see Issei angry at him and punched the knight in the face. Ruin gets up and notices his armor in his chest is gone. Impressive but not good enough. His skin turns to a deep red. This armor is nothing compared to my true armor. My skin is many times harder than steel. Issei just summoned Drag and boosted himself 3 times before punching his stomach so hard. He coughs blood and collapsed, defeated. He grabs him and says, you tried to hurt my comrades. For that you lose your life. He activates his power and creates a small sun and burned the body to grilled night. He sees the source of the hypnosis power and picked up the bell before crushing it. Lupus was in a tree while this happened and woke up. What happened? Issei helps her down while explaining what had happened to her. Good to see you're awake. Long story short, hypnotism from this guy put you and Diane in a trance-like state. Lupus looks sad and bows her head in shame. I'm sorry for allowing myself to be caught by such a cheap trick. Issei just pats her on the head. Don't worry about it. The point is you're awake. Now let's go find Diane and see what happened to the knight. Lupus looks at Ruin. The grilled smell made her stomach growls loudly. She blushed and looked at Issei. Issei, could I? Issei just nodded. You deserve a treat. I'm going to go check on Diane. Enjoy. Lupus smiles at him and then turns to the collapsed body. I am a little hungry. She grabs the knight and drags him to a fair distance away from the group and enjoyed her meal. Diane was holding the female knight in her hand and saw Issei. Oh hey. Where's Lupus Regina? Issei just said. She's spoiling herself to a meal. Diane didn't know about Lupus Regina's beast form, but thankfully she didn't question it. Issei saw the knight in Diane's hand and asked. Listen lady, you got options. 1. Tell us everything about the sin in based prison or my comrades Diane and Lupus will be having an interesting snack. It's true. They turned to see Lupus skipping along the path with Ruin's helmet. The helmet was burned a bit but still recognizable. Lupus Regina grinned darkly at the pink knight and asked Issei. Hey Issei. I'm still a bit hungry, can I have a second serving? She grins with her teeth showing and her eyes glowing in the sunlight. Frisia was scared of the girl in front of her and she didn't know why. Diane was a little surprised at the change in the maid. Issei was just looking at the knight. So what's it gonna be, lunch for my friend or tell us everything? Frisia gulped and stared at the 3 of them before sighing. Alright, I'll talk. My spy bug saw you and the plan was for Ruin and I to keep you all busy and Golgius head to the bar and capture the princess. Everyone was surprised until she said. Golgius failed and came back frightened. He told us everything before he was going to go get backup to take you all out. He told us to continue the attack and you 3 to buy him time. Issei was shocked that they didn't even realize one of them attacked the base until Meliodas and the others revealed themselves. Hey guys, good job taking care of those 2. Hey Issei, remind me not to get near Lupus when she's hungry. Issei just nodded and everyone else smirks at what he said while Lupus Regina giggles happily. They made their way to based prison and Frisia was tied using her own whip to make sure she wouldn't try to run. The prison was divided into 2 paths. Meliodas said they should split up with Diane, Elizabeth, and Hawk go with him along with Frieza and see if they find Ban, while Issei and Lupus Regina go the other way and see if they can find anyone who was also trapped here. They nodded and went their separate ways. With Issei and Lupus, they walk down the hall and notice a woman with lavender hair and a ponytail and chained to the wall. Issei grabbed the bars and broke the door off the cage, and Lupus quickly moved in and cut her down from the wall. Issei reaches into his personal portal and grabs a few spare clothes before giving them to Lupus. The woman cried into Lupus Regina's arms and thanked her for saving her. Issei let the two have a moment while waiting outside, keeping watch in case someone comes at them and trying to attack them. Lupus dried the woman's tears and asked, "Who did this to you?" The woman cried a little more and said, "Wild Fang. I betrayed the Holy Knights." Issei and Lupus were shocked until she asked, "Why did you betray them? I thought the Holy Knights looked out for each other." The woman looked at her and said, "My brother was a holy knight who defended the people and I wanted to be like him, but after the Sins betrayed Lions and the Holy Knights abused their power, he tried to make them understand what they were doing is wrong. They didn't listen and killed him in cold blood. I was able to receive his powers a few days later, but that man used a seal on me to prevent me from using my powers. The weird fangs took me in and beat me every day. The only one who treated me fairly was Lady Frieza. Oh, by the way, my name's Jericho. Former Holy Knight apprentice." Lupus helped her with the clothes and they came out of the cell, and Jericho saw Issei and asked, "Are you here to save the sin of greed?" He nodded. Jericho thought of getting revenge on the Knights and asked, "Can I join your group? I want to make the Knights pay for betraying my brother." Issei thought of this and looked at Lupus for aid. She nodded and he smiled at her, then turned to look at Jericho. "Okay, you can join. But we are already with two of the Sins already. Envy and Wrath, along with Princess Elizabeth." Jericho was shocked. Two of the Sins and the third princess. Hear what is happening outside these walls. She shook the thought away and stared ahead. "What's that?" Issei turned to see something on the ground. They walked and noticed it was a dead body. Jericho gasped. "That's the fourth Weird Fang member. If he's dead then it can only mean that he's escaped from his cell." Lupus asked. "You mean the Fox Sin of Greed, Ban?" Jericho nodded and Issei saw something hanging from the deceased knight's neck. A necklace with 3 purple gems that glowed a little when he grabbed it. Drake senses a presence in the crystals, but before he could tell his partner about it, the prison started to shake from something. Lupus used a communication circle to talk to Elizabeth. "Elizabeth, what's going on over there? Did you find Ban yet?" "Yes, but Sir Meliodas and Sir Ban are having a bit of a fight." Lupus, Issei, and Jericho have deadpan faces when they hear this. And responded as a normal person would. "What?" The prison fell apart and Issei quickly revealed his wings and grabbed both Lupus and Jericho. "Hold tight." They latched onto his arms and Issei took to the sky, and when they got out, they noticed the backup and the Silver Knight withdrew from the prison. TCH. Cowards. The prison collapsed and at the bottom of the rubble was Diane curled up in a ball, protecting Elizabeth and Hawk. Meliodas and a silver-haired man with red eyes and baggy pants were on their back saying their hellos. After the collapse of base prison, Issei and Lupus Regina introduced Jericho to the group. Elizabeth and Hawk welcomes her to the team. Diane was unsure of her, thinking Jericho was a rival for her captain's heart and Ban was saying she had a nice body. Meliodas welcomes her to the team after hearing her story. They all were celebrating Ban's return to the team with booze and good food, prepared by both Ban and Issei. The two had created a rivalry to see whose meals were better. Needless to say, they became good friends after trying each other's culinary arts. Meliodas said that they would be heading to the capital of the dead. The rumor was that King died and was in that location. So we're gonna check it out to see if that was true or not. Jericho watched the others from the back. "These are the 7 deadly sins. I heard they were monsters in human flesh and now they were cold and cruel to others, but seeing them now. They're nothing like the rumors describe them. They're people just like me and you, bro." She looked at Issei chatting with Ban about more ideas to improve the quality and flavor of his meals. "That guy, Issei Haidu. He's a cool person. My brother and him would have definitely gotten along." She looked outside and saw the full moon shine in the darkness. She remembered what being a holy knight meant to her brother, so she made a vow. "Brother, I swear on my name and my sword. I will surpass you one day with your power, Ice Fang. I'll be the greatest knight in all of Britannia." After making her vow, she decided to talk to the others. She walked beside Issei, beginning a bond that will melt her frozen heart and shatter her fears. As for Frieza, she faked her death at the prison, and now that she's free from her status as a holy knight, after gathering her stuff that was still salvageable from the prison, she decided to live her life as a normal human and enjoy the freedom of being an ordinary woman. She planned on going back to her village first to make amends before departing from them. Now it's time for a trip to the land of the dead. Meliodas and the team were looking at the map. While doing so, Ban asked Meliodas. "Hey Captain. I thought King died, so why are we heading to the place he died?" Meliodas didn't turn from the map when he answered Ban's question. "I think King's still alive. If what Gilfinder said is true, then King's definitely still alive and is waiting for us there." He looked and noticed 3 people were missing from the group. "Hey Elizabeth, where's Issei, Lupus Regina, and Jericho?" Elizabeth points out the window. Ban and Meliodas walk to the window and see Lupus Regina and Issei fighting Jericho, while Diane watched from the sides, on Hawk's mother's back. Jericho didn't want to be weak, so she asked both Issei and Lupus if they could train her. They accepted the offer and sparred with her every day. Jericho was getting the hang of using her ice powers, but still had trouble holding a freeze field for a limited time. Issei times her when they spar and concluded that for now she could only use Ice Fang for 10 minutes, any longer than that, and her body began to freeze itself because her Huan body couldn't adjust to extremely cold temperatures. She may be a warrior who uses ice, but she isn't immune to the harsh cold. Issei has practiced his sunshine powers and was able to learn how to use the fire abilities that came with it. He could coat parts of his body with fire in order to cause more damage to his opponents when punching or kicking them. He was even able to enhance his dragon breath with sunshine and make it even stronger. Britta and Ascalon took some getting used to, since he was always more of a breaker and only had a grasp of swordsmanship, but luckily Jericho offered to help him get used to using his new weapons. Issei got used to the weight of Britta and Ascalon, but one day he wanted to take the materials and forge a new weapon that combines both Ascalon's defensive and overwhelming holy power, along with Britta's sealing power and its weight to increase its swings. But that's food for thought. Lupus got used to using her new weapon and learned more destructive magic instead of mostly healing magic. Her relationship with Issei grew, not to the point where they're mates, but to the point where he's getting used to her flirtatious acts. She had on one or more occasions tried to get him to make her marked, but he held strong and wanted to establish a good relationship first before doing the deed. Jericho was watching the two during those times, and for the past few days since she's met them. Issei, Lupus, and Elizabeth have been the only ones who treated her with more kindness than the others. Diane and Meliodas looked at her and wanted to try and grope her assets. Diane was tolerating her. Issei did have lust, but controlled himself and welcomed her with opened arms. Lupus Regina teases her about her falling for Issei and has kissed her cheek on more than one occasion. Elizabeth was the kind princess that she remembered. She saw them as an insane, crazy, but wonderful family. One that fights together and lives together. After they finished their training for the day, Jericho thought what would have happened if she hadn't betrayed the Holy Knights. Become a demon and fall in a one-sided love with Ban. Ha. Like that could ever happen. Another Jericho in love with a greedy fox sneezed before catching up to Ban and King. Ah, memories. Issei got some water for all 3 of them, and as they sat down and enjoyed themselves, the others were amazed by how well their newest member is adjusting to her new life. Diane was slowly getting used to the newest members since they are good people, and they did help save Ban from prison and help save her from the illusion that ruin placed upon her. Meliodas saw that the 3 of them were reminding him of Gil and the other troublemakers back in the day. Ban saw 3 good friends having a great time chatting and sparring with each other. Just like the good old days. Eventually, they've arrived at their destination. A village that looked more like a ghost village with no men, women, or children in sight. Tala Village. When Hawk's mom larked in Tala Village, Ban said he had something to do. Meliodas suggested trying to get customers, so Diane, Hawk, and Elizabeth stayed behind at the bar to try and get customers. Issei, Jericho, and Lupus Regina went out to check out the town and see if they could find anything that could give them a clue. They disappeared while Meliodas was talking about getting the tavern up and running for customers. While they were searching the town, Lupus asked Issei. Hey Issei, do you really think we will be able to find something about this Necropolis place in a ghost town like this? There's practically no one here. Jericho puts her arms around the back of her head. She's right. The place is deserted and no one's been here for a very long time. I still don't get why this place was actually a village. Issei kept walking until he stopped and looked around. He decided to use his dragon hearing on the area. His eyes opened and looked in a direction. Lupus and Jericho saw this. Jericho asked. Issei. What's wrong? Lupus listened with her own hearing and her eyes narrowed as she got her weapon ready. Someone's here and they've been following us. Jericho grabs her sword. Help me. A tiny weak voice came out and a little girl stumbled out of the house and fell on the ground. Jericho saw this and ran to the child. Hey, you alright? Speak to me. Her answer was the girl's belly grumbling really loudly for all to hear. Jericho facepalmed. Lupus was stifling a laugh and Issei just sighed and rubbed the back of his head. Issei took out some fruit that he snuck out of the kitchen and fed the kid. Here, eat this. She took a bite and the girl was woke up with stars in her eyes. That's so good. A voice called out to them. "Hey, get away from my sister." Everyone looked and saw a kid with a pitchfork aimed at Issei. Jericho tried to talk him down. "We're not here for trouble. We're just trying to help this girl. Can you tell me what happened?" The boy saw his sister nodding her head to reassure him that they weren't enemies. A few moments later, the kid put down the pitchfork. "I'm sorry. It's just that the Holy Knights came and took away everyone. My sister and I are all that's left. No one saw it coming. We lost our parents and friends. We were able to hide, but after we came out of our hiding spot, everyone was gone." Jericho clenched her fist as she heard this. They didn't even bother checking to see if there were any others left. Issei saw this and put a hand on her shoulder to calm her down before she explodes in front of the kids. Lupus Regina crouched down to their level and asked them, "How would you guys like some food? We work for a tavern and it's not that far, what do you say? It'll be on the house." The brother and sister looked at each other before nodding their heads. As the group left the old house, they didn't notice two individuals watching them from the shadows. The little boy wearing a hoodie that was gold and blue was wondering who they were. It wasn't until he saw said tavern and saw Diane outside yelling something. He shook his head and was happy that she was alright. So what surprised him next was that Diane welcomes the trio and the kids to the tavern. He flew close by but stayed in the shadows so he could see the captain, a girl with white hair and a very interesting maid outfit, a talking pig, and Ban. He growls that name as he grabbed his pillow harder. He whispered softly, "I won't ever forgive you." The second individual was a black-haired woman who had silver and pink armor. She followed Gilthander's orders and went to help King find Necropolis. She was doing a stakeout but then noticed a familiar face. Jericho. She was surprised because she and Jericho were good friends, but when Jericho defected and left the Holy Knights, she thought she died because the report said so. How is she still alive? Where has she been his whole time? And who are they? She saw the brown-haired boy and the maid walking with Jericho. They were talking about something until they saw the girl collapse on the ground and helped her. As she watched this, she was reminded of the Jericho that she knew from the castle. Brash and hot-headed but a kind spirit that wished to help her people. Fierce and loyal to the end. That's the Jericho that she knew. Issei and Lupus Regina were at the stove finishing the food for everyone. Ban eventually came back with a hole mark in his chest. When they asked what happened, all he said was that a brat attacked him. Ban saw the meal places in front of him and smirked at Issei as he and Lupus passed out the food for everyone else. Including Diane. Diane was happy to be getting food and quickly dived in. Everyone did and was very impressed by the cooking skills of the dragon. Ban had to know his secret. How do you get so good at cooking? What your secret? Issei smirks. It comes from living in a mountain for 2 months while getting chased by a giant dragon who was literally breathing fire at me. Elizabeth, Hawk, Diane, and the kids were shocked. Meliodas, Ban, and Lupus Regina were just staring at him until Ban laughed before slapping Issei on the back. "Nice set of skills you got. You'll definitely make your wife happy when you settle down." Issei and Lupus looked at each other and blushed from the thought of being married. Jericho did some reason felt something ugly in her chest when she heard this. Elizabeth and Diane was blushing and went into fangirl mode about the wedding. The kids didn't pay attention as they went back to the food. The two outside watching were shocked at this development. The female knight pondered, "These are the terrifying criminals. They act more like a family." She grabs a necklace around her neck. Family. She grabs the purple and remembered her father dying on a mission and her little brother dying from a rare illness. The only thing she had to remember them by was a necklace that her father gave to her. He said that should her life be in danger, the necklace will help protect her. The boy in the hoodie was reminded of Ban and his sister dying because of the man's greedy desires for the fountain of youth. After they finished eating, it was time to get answers. Issei sat down across the kids. "Listen, I got a question about Necropolis. How do you get to it? There's got to be some way to get there, right?" The boy shook his head. "It's not that simple. It's a place where only the dead go, but my sister and I did hear a saying about Necropolis. Shared memories of a dear deceased person will open the gateway to the Necropolis. But that's all we know." Issei nodded and thanked the two kids. The kids decided to head home despite Elizabeth and Diane trying to get them to stay. Everyone headed out to a large opening in the center of the town. Everyone tried to think of something, but the only ones who were drift back into memory lane was Ban and Issei. Ban remembers the memories of a blonde-haired girl who looked happy to see him. He smiles at the old memory of the woman he loved a long time ago. Issei's memories brought back an old ghost from his past. A black-haired woman wearing nothing but attire. She smiles and reaches out to him with a saddened look on her face. She mouths words that he can't hear until he wakes up to see pink flowers surrounding him and the others. Next thing happened so fast, he couldn't process it quickly enough. The petals floated in the air and spun around the group like a tornado. The brother and sister were watching from outside and held onto each other for dear life. A certain knight charged into the tornado and hid herself so she couldn't be noticed by the Sins. The tornado disappears with Issei, Lupus Regina, Jericho, Ban, Meliodas, Diane, Elizabeth, and Hawk surrounded by giant crystals. Ban saw an image of Elaine and took off after her. Issei saw an image of a black-haired woman that he knew too well and followed her with Jericho and Lupus Regina, trying to catch up to him. The female knight followed Issei's group while the boy followed Ban. Issei eventually caught up to the spirit and saw a face that he hadn't seen in a long time. He smiles as he spoke to the spirit. "Good to see you again, Rainer." The woman smiles, a kind, gentle one, and looks like she was waiting for 1,000 years to see him again. "Hello, Issei. My love." Issei saw the first woman he loved right in front of him. The same woman who left a scar in heart and was the reason he had trouble accepting the love from any of the women back in his world. Rainer saw the man that she killed after the date. The only reason she killed him was because of her crush on Azazel and how she wanted to prove herself as both a soldier and a person he would love. Unfortunately, she was killed by Riaz, but before she died, she inserted a piece of herself inside of Issei's soul. The only way the process could work was if the target has deep feelings for the person, and luckily for her, Issei still had feelings for her despite her killing him. After she inserted herself inside of Issei's soul, she was able to watch everything that happened during his time as a devil. The time Issei and the orc fought Kakabiel, the pool cleaning, the meeting of the three factions, Issei versus Vali for the first time, when Asia was taken by Diodora, and finally the fight with Fenrir and Loki. During that time, she saw Azazel and was very surprised when she questioned herself how she fell in love with him if he was so lazy. It was pretty obvious that many girls had a crush on Issei due to his kind heart and his dragon aura. She was a bit jealous of the attention that the girls were receiving from him, especially Asia and Riaz, and pondered what it would feel like if she was given that same attention from him. When Issei was banished to the land of Britannia, she was surprised that she was dragged out of his soul and sent to another place filled with the souls of others. According to them, the land of Necropolis was a resting ground for souls who still have unfinished business with someone from the outside world. That's when Rainer realized that she had conflicting emotions with herself and Issei. So when she sensed him near the gate of Necropolis, she tried to make him remember the date they had when she was Yuma Amano, and sure enough it worked, and the gateway was opened, also because of the memories that the drunken white-haired one had for a certain fairy. Which leads us to now where the two were staring at each other. Issei clenched his fists. Rainer stares at him with a sad look on her face. She reaches out to touch his cheeks and succeeded. "Listen. I know you're mad at me for what I did to you, and personally, I don't blame you for hating me, but please listen to what I have to say." Issei looks at her before sighing to himself. "Alright." She smiles and begins to say her piece. "At first, before the date, I only saw you as a way to get what I wanted most. The love of Azazel, but once we were on the date a part of me was actually enjoying the date, but another half of me wanted to go ahead and end you, so I wouldn't have to speak to you again." Issei didn't say anything as he let the woman continue. "And so by the time we were at the park, I was steeling myself to end you, but my other side was screaming at me not to kill you. My heart was pounding against my chest, and it felt like my mind was battling against itself. I tried to reason with myself that it had to be done. So when I asked you if you would die for me, I struck without a care in the world." Issei didn't move his hands, but he knew about the scar on his chest. The first scar that introduced him to the supernatural world. "When I left you to die, I cried myself to sleep, and as I slept, I saw you die again and again, over and over. My heart broke every time I saw you die, and as I watched myself do it, I felt like a monster for what I did to you. But when I heard from Calwerner that you were still alive, I was glad, but to hear that the Grimoire brat reincarnated you as a slave. It hurt seeing you act like an obedient dog to her. I saw your real self when you were spending time with a nun instead of the members of that little team from your school." Issei chuckled as she said he was like an obedient dog, which wasn't a lie. Though he'd never admitted. "Eventually, we met up again when you hit me, which by the way, good punch. I wanted to see if you still had a place for me in your heart. I saw you look at the bracelet and your eyes told me that you still had a soft spot for me. Before my body was destroyed by the blast from the power of destruction, I used a spell to attach a part of my soul to you so I could be by your side." Issei was shocked to learn that the woman used a binding spell to keep her tethered to the earth so she wouldn't pass on to the afterlife. "Why would you want to bind yourself to me?" Rainer looked at him in the eyes and said, "Because if you truly love someone, you would do anything for them." Issei scoffed at the reason. "Really? You love me? What a joke." He went to sit on a crystal and faced the land in front of him until he felt someone put a weight on his shoulder. He turned to see Rainer had sat next to him and laid her head on his shoulder. "I know you have trouble believing me, but please understand. I know what I did was cruel, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but please answer one question for me. Just one." Issei kept staring off in the distance and responded. "What is your question?" Rainer walks in front of him and looks at him in the eyes. Would you die for me? Issei stares into her violet eyes that have haunted him for a long time, but seeing them now, eyes full of regret, sorrow, and fear. He looked at her with the old love he felt for her and decided that he could finally release himself from his old love. I would. Rainer smiles. But you have others you would die for, don't you? Issei nodded. She looks at the crystals. Come on out. I can sense you over there. Lupus Regina and Jericho came out and looked at the woman who killed Issei as well as his first love. Lupus Regina was passive as she didn't make a threatening move. Jericho, on the other hand, was a bit furious at the woman for emotionally hurting the man she grew to care for. She walked up to Rainer and grabbed her. Do you truly regret what you did to him, or are you just spouting out garbage? Answer me correctly before I plunge my blade in your chest. Rainer wasn't really scared since weapons can't harm spirits, but it seemed Jericho didn't care. I do. Jericho saw this and lowered her sword. Rainer then turned to Issei. Thank you for forgiving me. Issei, please don't let my actions stop you from loving those who wish to be with you. Those two do care for you, I see it in their eyes. Love them and cherish them forever. She then looked at the two girls. Lupus Regina, I thank you for looking after Issei. I know he's a good man and despite his faults he will fight for you and be willing to carry your burden. Please promise me you'll protect him and love him with all your heart. Lupus Regina heard the sincerity in the fallen's words and nodded. I promise. I will be there for him no matter what. Rainer nods her head in thanks and turned to Jericho. Jericho stopped her before she could speak. Trust me. I wouldn't betray him. He saved my life and I owe him. He reminds me of myself when I wanted power and to become stronger. So I'll fight for the people I swore to protect and my friends. Rainer smiles warmly before turning to Golden Sparkles. I thank you, Issei, for hearing what I had to say, and now I can rest. Now that I've seen you one last time. She disappears in a flurry of golden sparkles, and now her soul rests in peace. No longer having any regrets. Issei watched this and said. Rest in peace, my love. You may have hurt me, but in a way you also helped me. I hope you get reincarnated in a new life, that way you can have a good life and find love. Lupus Regina and Jericho walked to him and sat next to him. You okay? Issei nodded, his back felt lighter, as if a heavy burden was cast off of him. Yeah. I am. He gets up and dusts himself off. Come on, let's go find the others. An explosion occurred behind them as they looked at the blast. Issei and the others rushed to where the explosion happened and saw Meliodas, Diane, and Ban fighting a woman. Issei summoned his armor and his Ascalon. He clashed with a woman who was surprised by his speed. Interesting. You're the one Twigo told me about in the report. She glanced to the side and saw her old friend. It's good to see that you're still alive, Jericho. Jericho chid when she heard the comment. It's good to see you too. So how's life treating you? Bila could hear the sarcasm in her voice. Look, I know what happened. If you come with me, I can talk to Hendrickson and maybe he can help you become a holy knight again. Isn't that what you want? Jericho shook her head as she pointed her sword to Gila. I became a holy knight to protect others. Not to harm them. The holy knights that I once respected when I was a child have betrayed any form of trust I put in them. You know this, Gila. Your father was a knight but died, and so is your brother. Join me and the 7 deadly sins. They aren't the villains here, the knights that lead the kingdom are. Help us save the people who are suffering. Bila was having an internal struggle. On one hand, she wanted to join her friend and fight the corruption, but she also had a duty to fulfill. Jericho. You and the 7 deadly sins are under arrest. Please come quietly. Jericho sighs as she heard this. I guess it comes to this. She looks at Meliodas. Hey Meliodas, let Issei, Lupus, and I handle this. Meliodas and Ban looked at each other and sat in front of Diane. Pick her ass. Ban yelled. Meliodas yelled. If you lose, you're cooking for the rest of the week. Issei grins and readies himself. Lupus Regina pulled out her staff. Let's do this. Jericho pulls out her sword. Before they charged. Hold on, I'll deal with her. King and Elizabeth appeared behind Gila and surprised everyone by attacking Gila. Elizabeth rushes to Meliodas, Ban, and Diane to heal them. Lupus Regina went to help her heal them, per Issei's orders. Issei and Jericho saw that King was fighting with them. Glad to have you aboard, grisly sin of sloth. King smirked at him and said. Let's show her how we do things. Bila smiles at the challenge. I'll take you all 3 of you head on. She raised her rapier. Let's begin this dance of death. The warriors charged ready to fight in this final clash. Bila swat away Ascalon with her sword and parried her blade with Jericho until a spear came and cut her cheek. What? King looked disappointed. Come on, show me what you can truly do. He made a few hand motions and his spear started to fly around like crazy and sliced her in many areas. While she was trying to block the attacks, Issei charges at Gila and used a flat part of Ascalon's blade and hit her head. Gila stumbles around until Jericho froze her feet at the same spot. King used Chastafel to attack her, but Gila tapped the ice, trapping her with her sword. Then the ice exploded. Everyone saw a figure jump out of the blast onto a tower made of crystals. Gila held her rapier in the air, made a giant fireball. Brilliant detonation. Issei was shocked, and Jericho didn't know her friend could use a deadly attack like that. King wasn't fazed and called his spear. It spun as he spoke. Chastafel. 5th configuration. Expansion. The spear became hundreds of dagger, and King released them all at once. The giant fireball exploded and became more tiny fireballs hitting the daggers. The sky was lit up in a burst of colors until Issei appeared behind her and knocked her out. Jericho froze her in a block of ice. Sorry Gila, I hope you forgive me. Ping looked at the others and saw they were fine. Ping, the grisly sin of sloth is here to aid the 7 deadly sins. Issei smiles and shakes his hand. Welcome aboard. Now what should we do with her? They looked at Gila, and Meliodas pulled a black sharpies from his pocket. Don't worry, I'll handle this. Unknown to them, the necklace around Gila's neck flowed faintly as the spirit within the human knight was looking at a particular brown-haired knight. She was like Gila, but her skin was white and had red eyes mixed with black. Her armor was off of her chest as she got turned on by the power from him. Oh. Issei Haidu. I can't wait to be with you. First I'm gonna have to show that brat Gila how to give a man a good time as punishment. The spirit laughed pervertedly as she had many images in her mind about her and Issei making babies with many different positions. The 7 deadly sins were making their way to the Vasil festival. Apparently there was a rumor that a giant hammer was there, and Diane said that her sacred treasure was a giant hammer, so they all decided to see if the hammer was Diane's. If it was, then it would definitely be a trap set up by the Holy Knights to trap them. Issei and Lupus Regina were very interested in the history of the fairy kingdom, so they asked King a lot of questions they had about his race. King blushed since he was out on the spotlight and was able to answer the question as best as he could. Jericho was also adjusting well to her new situation. She got along with the two of them and was in friendly terms with Elizabeth, but when it came to the others she was still a bit wary of them, and who could blame her? It's every day you get saved by the most wanted criminals in the kingdom and become friends with them overnight. They were going to make a stop in a village to restock on supplies, but as they got there they were going to see just how dark times have become since the Holy Knights' rebellion. Salem was the leader's daughter of a small village that was an excellent trading post and had fine medicine to take care of any ill or injured travelers, but lately, they've been running low on funds to purchase medicine because of them. No matter how hard she tried to keep the peace in her village, the people still suffered from the turmoil of the newest refugees that enjoyed making them suffer. It hasn't always been like this. Before the whole Holy Night fiasco, the village was full of smiles and laughter as her father and mother led this village and governed the others. They were strict but fair with others, and the people truly admired them for leading them and helping them with their problems that occur in the village. Salem's has her mother's angelic looks and her father's unique ears that she inherited from her. Her pointy ears wiggled as she remembered that others have looked at her weird since she was always different from the other children in the village. She was smarter than them, grew up faster, and for some reason rarely even got sick from any form of illness. However, when her parents died and on her 21st birthday, she took over the responsibilities of being the leader of the village. She looked at the wall and saw the sword her father had given to her when she was 10 years old. Her father wanted her to be able to protect herself, and so he taught her how to use her magic and how to wield a sword. The sword was called the Escalating Dragon Armor. Incursio. It looked like a normal short sword with a chain-linked tassel in its sealed form, but no, it wasn't any ordinary blade. It was a special sword that held a dragon within it, and the sword had the ability to progressively transform the user into a dragon as the fight escalates. Incursio was a dear friend to her, and when she unlocked the armor's power, she felt invincible, but was shocked when she saw her skin turn blue, and she grew horns, wings, and a tail. She was surprised by the transformation until her father and mother sat down and explained her transformation to her. It wasn't a side effect of the armor. It was because of her blood that she inherited from her father. She was a Cambion. Incursio explained to her that she was a child born from the unholy union between a demon and a human. Before the Holy War, the demons from the demon realm had many rules when it came to mating, and the rules stated that they couldn't mate with a human, nor a member of the goddess race, but her father was injured after protecting a small village from a rogue demon. He crashed into his wife's home, and she healed his wound and took care of him until he decided to fake his death so he could be with his wife. He did so and became one with his wife 6 months after his fake death. When Salem was born they knew they would have to keep her heritage a secret, so they cast a glamour spell on her that hid her demon appendages, except for her pointed ears from others around her. Salem learned how to cast the glamour spell on herself, but she always hated hiding her true self when she felt like she has always been chained to being something she isn't. She didn't hate her human or demonic side, but she hated hiding her demon side since it felt like she was disappointing her father and didn't care about him. Which wasn't true at all. Salem sat in her seat as she rubbed her head to calm the massive headache she was receiving until her eyes caught an old photo next to her. It was a picture of her and a girl with long purple hair and purple eyes. She wore a witch outfit that showed off her sizable assets and made her very beautiful. Her name was Umbra and she was the only one Salem could call a true friend. Umbra was a black sheep in the village like Salem, and when the two met each other, they really hit it off. Umbra didn't really have any bloodline magic like Salem did, but she had a strong affinity for destruction magic. It involved of her mostly having the ability to either create massive explosions or the complete annihilation of matter on a smaller scale. She was even able to use necromancy, which allowed her to control and manipulate the dead. Of course, unlike the others girls, Umbra and Salem didn't like the men in the village. They were connected and enjoyed each other's company so much that they fell in love with each other. Of course, this was looked down at the village, and the two tried to keep their relationship a secret until on Salem's 20th birthday, the two of them wanted to do the deed and made a promise to each other that they would tell Salem's parents together that they were a secret couple. Unfortunately, things didn't work out the way they planned. One of the villagers saw the two girls share a deep passionate kiss and heard how they were going to have a special night. The villager alerted the others and they confronted the girls. They automatically presumed Umbra had corrupted the innocent Salem, but she tried to tell them that she loved Umbra as well, but Umbra didn't want her girlfriend to get in trouble, so she sent her a telepathic message to not inform them of their relationship. Salem cried as she watched her friend was banished from the village, and before Umbra left, she looked at Salem and nodded as a sign that she would be back for her lover. And on that night, the two souls were crying out for the other, and no matter how hard she put up an act of a good girl, deep down she hated the villagers for tearing the two of them apart. She put up with the villagers and did receive a few marriage proposals, but she never accepted them because her heart was with the mage that stole her heart, and vice versa. Salem had a feeling that one day, they would reunite and be together, even if she had to run away from her village. Little did she know, her lover was returning. Bandit camp. The bandits were enjoying their dinner as they prepared to take the money for their protection taxes, but there was one bandit who kept her true identity a secret, and that was a certain mage. Umbra clenched her fist as she mentally prepared herself to enter the leader's home and reveal her true self to Salem. Umbra has worked her ass off to become stronger in her mage craft and had become more of a necromancer than an ordinary mage. She was working in a spell until one day she was approached by a woman who called herself Mono. She said she was leading an attack on a village that had an interesting leader and also a rumored dragon that unknowing protects the village from bandits and such. At first, Umbra refused, but when the name of her village was brought up, Umbra quickly had a plan to join the bandits and work with them until she was with her lover, Salem. However, her boss, Mono, had been keeping an eye on the girl as she knew that the mage has ulterior motives, but she should go with it for now. Mono reflected back on her life as she remembered the day she was born into the world. She was told by her owner that she was an artificial human that was created exclusively for combat and murderous purposes. During her entire life she had only remembered being trained to fight and kill without mercy. She wasn't one who relied on luck. She used logic and reasoning when making decisions, but when a new learning moment appears, she observes so she could keep the memory in her mind. Eventually she learned that her creators apparently made her to live at the behest of others, so when she was summoned by Easton, she claimed that her only purpose in life was to follow orders like she was born to do. After Lilia was captured by Merlin a long time ago, she was summoned by Easton and Valenti to help them rescue the mage. The human weapon, however, initially refused and attacked the two disasters, but, after a brief battle Easton and Valenti convinced Mono to help them, after the latter convinces her to join the group to find a new purpose on life, now following her own desires. After successfully breaking into Lilia's prison, Mono, along with Easton, were surprised by the sudden attack of Ban and Gother, but Lilia suddenly appears and defeat the two sins with the ruler of Sea's help. After those events, Mono officially becomes a member of the Seven Disasters. That was until they were banished into the goddess Amber that held them for many years, only to be broken out by a knight by the name of Hendrickson. Lilia and the others needed to find the key that unlocked the seal that kept three extremely powerful demons within it. According to Hendrickson, if the three were on their side, then they would be an unstoppable force to be reckoned with. The day was coming as the tribe would be attacking the village soon. Umbra prepared to reunite with her lover, while Mono prepared to herself to follow her orders. At the village. A day before the attack. The Boars had it opened up for business when they made it to the town, and they were welcomed with open arms as the residents came and enjoyed a nice warm meal. Elizabeth and Lupus Regina enjoyed serving the others their meals and drinks, while Ban and Issei were working in the back of the kitchen, while Meliodas and King prepared the booze. Diane had to hide herself since her size would draw customers away, and she was given a special assignment to be on the lookout with Jericho, who was a bit hesitant at first until Issei convinced her to go with the sin of envy. The day was over as Meliodas and Hawk went over how much they made while Ban, Elizabeth, and Jericho helped out with the cleanup. Issei and Lupus Regina were escorting the leader of the village back to her home after she drank a bit too much and was a bit tipsy. Issei was carrying the girl on his back while Lupus Regina looked at the residents while enjoying the nice cool breeze. She leaned over to Salem and whispered, "How long are you gonna pretend to be drunk?" Salem had turned and looked at Lupus Regina before sighing to herself for getting caught. "Looks like nothing gets past you two. Can you two keep a secret for me, please?" They neared her house as Issei nodded to reply that he could keep a secret. The three entered the house and placed her on the couch. Salem sat up and explained everything about her bloodline, since she had a feeling she could trust Issei and his friend. Salem then showed them the letter that was sent to them by the bandits that wished to attack their village and plunder them of all their wealth. She got on her knees and begged Issei and Lupus Regina to fight with her to protect the village. Issei looked at his companion and she nodded at him. Issei put a hand on her shoulder and smiled. "Okay, we'll help, but I need to know what that sword is exactly. It's definitely no ordinary blade, so what is it exactly?" Salem brings the sword to him and he picks it up as he looks into it before his eyes widened. "Dreg. Do you sense that?" The gauntlet appeared on his left arm. "It's been a while in Curcio. I've almost forgotten about the deadly dragon that has the ability to evolve in any environment or against any opponent. And now you're in a weapon just like me. Ironic, isn't it?" The sword's red gem appeared and on the blade as it looked at the gauntlet. "That's pretty big talk coming from another weakling like you who got his ass handed to him by God. So this is your wielder now, huh? Not bad at all, but I bet my host can kick his ass." Salem put the sword down as she sat down on the couch again. "I understand your issues with each other, but please remember that we are in a partnership now, and if we're going to defeat those bandits once and for all, then we're going to need all the help we can get. Do you know of anyone else who can help us?" Issei smirked as opened a magic communication channel and spoke into it. "Did you get that?" "Loud and clear. The 7 deadly sins are more than happy to help." Salem smiled as she thanked the two of them before they departed back to the boar's hat. She went to the picture and smiled at her friend and lover. "When this is all over, I'll leave this village and come find you. I'm sick of hiding who I am. I want to see you again so I can ask you an important question." She looks at the hidden compartment and looks at the ring before putting it back. Salem then turned in for the night and went to sleep. The next day, the 7 deadly sins, Issei and his team, along with Salem, discussed their plan of attack and how they would evacuate the civilians, while those who could fight stayed behind and trained for their arrival. Diane and King took the civilians to a safe place with Hawk's mom so they would be safe. Meliodas, Ban, and King were working on training and sparring with each other to get stronger. Lupus Regina and Jericho were given the responsibility to train the civilians who wanted to fight and get them at least battle ready for tomorrow. Salem was practicing her fighting style with Issei since the two had dragon-like sacred gears. Salem told Issei about her ex-girlfriend and what her plan was after he fight was over. Issei patted her shoulder and nodded in understanding, but he told her that she should tell the people about her true relationship with Umbra and her true form. "But what if they reject me for what I am?" Issei looks at her then switched to the sky. "You shouldn't let the opinions of others make you be someone you're not. You're proud of your power and heritage, so accept it. Show them the real you, and if they don't accept you then that's on them. Don't be ashamed of your powers. What defines your power isn't them. What defines your power is you and you alone." Salem was shocked as she hung on to every word that he said. She smiled before getting up and revealed her demon form and combined it with her dragon powers. "Let's kick things up a notch. You in?" Issei smiles at the challenge as he summons Rita and Ascalon. "Alright then, let's go." He charged in as he raised his weapons. "Bring it on." Eventually the day ended and they were getting their defenses ready because it was time for battle. The next day at dusk, the bandits came in on their horses and saw the village with wooden spikes right in front of their wall. The wall was small, but it gave the ones who knew archery plenty of room to move around and aim. Mono was intrigued that the small village is fighting back instead of surrendering. "Don't let their wall intimidate you. They are no match for your power. Now attack and make them down." The bandits roared as they rode into battle on their horses. As they continued forward, Issei and Salem stood in the middle of the field as they watched the bandits draw closer and closer. Issei looks at Salem and asks, "You ready?" Salem drew her sword and narrowed her eyes at the bandits. "I'm not running. I will use my true strength." Her demonic appearance came out and for the first time in her life she finally felt free. The sword covered her in armor and she growls as she crouched down on all fours, ready to pounce on her enemy. Issei summoned Rita and didn't even bother to use the boosted gear. Sorry Drake, but it would be wrong to use your power against common bandits. Drake waved his worries away as he was proud of his partner's growth. It's no problem. Just kick their ass but be wary of the leader and the mage. There's something fishy about them, so be cautious while fighting them. Issei nodded as he got ready. The bandits drew their swords as Grin to take ether first blood of the fools who dared to challenge them. The first bandit was about to stab him, but Issei just swung Rita and the man was cleaved in half. The second one tried to strike Salem, but she lunges towards the man and bashed him off of his horse. She ripped the man's body apart as she glares at the others. They were a bit scared of them until they charged at them, hoping to win by numbers. Issei created a small sun and threw it at the small group. The sun exploded and the group was burned to ash. Issei then used Rita on the other bandits who began to charge at him, while Salem was becoming more of a demonic dragon the longer that she fought with him. While the north was being occupied, an army of skeleton warriors and undead began to attack from the south, but they were quickly stopped by Ban and Meliodas, attacking and destroying them all with nothing more than mere punches while having a good time. A few of the bandits made it past Issei and Salem, but they were quickly brought down by either the dual Lupus Regina and Jericho or King and the villagers' archery skills. Mono concluded that this battle would not be in her favor unless something was done. She decided to enter the field and kill the strongest before moving on. She telepathically threw her 2 katanas at Issei, who saw them coming and batted them away. The katanas flew in the air until they came back down and tried to attack him again and again. Issei used his reflexes and speed to dodge the blades, while Monk charged in and was ready to stab him with her swords in hand until Salem stopped her. Don't even think about it. She kicked Mono to the side and was caught off guard by the attack. Mono skidded in the grass until she caught herself. Issei was able to get a good look at her and saw her appearance. She was a tall woman with light skin, short light violet hair, blue eyes and wear 2 hoop earrings. Her attire reminded him of an assassin, and he was impressed by how she was able to keep fighting while controlling 2 katanas. Mono got up and stared at the 2 of them before having to dodge ice and a swing from a weapon on her left and right. Lupus Regina and Jericho finished off the last of them before assisting Issei and Salem. Mono saw that she was at a great disadvantage and activated her trump card. Her eyes became darker and clones of herself appeared out of the shadows. I suggest you all surrender. You may be good at fighting me 1-on-4, but what about 100 versions of myself? The clones seemed to only have shadow versions of the sword she held in her hands, but not her katanas that she controlled. The clones sped forward and tried to rush them, but a powerful cold wind blew past them. Jericho had been working on a technique that increased her speed while stopping others. Everything before me will be encased in ice. The clone surrounded her as she closed her eyes, and a blue aura surrounded her. She opened her eyes as she shouted, Mahapadma. Time was stopped and Jericho smiled as made her way to the other clones and stabbed them in the heart or back. I can only use this technique once a day, and once it's used up, I'm so tired I can't use my legs for a while. Jericho charges Mono but gasps as her time dwindled down and Mono was shocked by the knight's sudden arrival. Jericho tried to slice off her arm, but… Stab. Jericho gasped as a katana stuck out of her sword arm that was about to attack her. She tried to move, but her body was too tired to even get up. Mono had her sword pointed to her head. Don't move. Surrender or the girl dies. They were about to put their weapons down until Umbra touched her. Hey. Why don't you let me handle this one? Mono looked at Umbra and saw the explosion spell ready. Very well. End this fight. Umbra smiled as she looked at the group before winking at the demonic dragon and snapped her fingers. An explosion hit Mono's back as she was sent towards Issei, who caught her, and the 2 katanas fell from her loss of concentration. Umbra quickly used a spell on the katanas and turned them to nothing but dust. Mono saw her weapons disappear and noticed her position. I believe this is the part where I surrender or you'll kill me. Issei picked her up and looked at her before asking, who are you and who sent you to attack this village? Mono sighed and saw a set of peering eyes from a certain crow. My name is Mono, the wielder of the commandment of pacifism. I am also known as the Shepherd of Death, and the one who sent me was actually the one who freed my comrades and myself. He had a plan to kill everyone in the village so I could harvest their souls to awaken the Demon King. But in order to do that, we need to unlock a seal that can only be opened if we have 2 things. The key and the blood of a goddess. Jericho was helped up by Lupus Regina and she began to heal her while Issei continued the interrogation. Why is it that you're confessing? Normal people wouldn't confess and lie to save themselves. Mono looked at his eyes and pointed to her chest. I don't have a heart. I'm a bioengineered weapon that was created for the sole purpose of killing and following orders. Also, I've wanted to leave the Holy Knights ever since they killed my comrade Shin and took his soul. The knights who were responsible for his death were the known as Hendrickson and Dreyfus. They killed him to set an example of what would happen should we defy their orders. I don't want the commandment, so I ask of you to please kill me and free me from this torment." Issei willed Rita away before summoning Ascalon. It flowed brightly as Mono closed her eyes and waited for death until the sword stabbed her chest and she felt as if she was being purified from the darkness that tried to consume her. The commandment left the body and Mono had a shocked face as she looked at Issei. "Why? Why didn't you kill me? I'm the one who led this attack on the village. I've killed multiple lives and I was planning on taking your life as well. That isn't a sin I can atone for." Issei chopped her head and Monk was rubbing a large bump on her head as Issei spoke to her. "Death's not a way of atonement. Don't be so naive." Mono was shocked by this statement and looked down. I'm not, but I was working with the Holy Knights and took innocent lives and I felt nothing. Doesn't that make me a monster? A monster that must be put down." Issei pulls out a handkerchief. "If that's your argument, then why are you crying right now?" Mono was shocked as she felt the tears and didn't even know she could. For the longest time, she's always just done what was told of her, but after seeing Shin die at the hands of the Holy Knights, it gave her a bad feeling in her chest. It was a disgusting feeling that she wanted to kill them and make them pay for what they did. When she asked Valenti about the feeling, the Earthshaker explained that what she was feeling was hatred. Mono never understood emotions, so that's why she always observed others, so she could get an understanding of what emotions felt like, but she never could quite understand it. That was until she met Umbra. The mage explained her reasons for going to the village, and Mono felt another emotion in her chest that she had no knowledge of until she learned the feeling was jealousy. She was jealous of Umbra and her desires for happiness in these cruel times, but admired her ambition of wanting to reunite with her lover. Issei wiped the tears off her face and hugged Mono. "If you want, you could always come with us and help us fight the kingdom. You could get revenge for your friend also. I highly doubt they would welcome you back. You saw it, didn't you?" He nodded. The crow was here. Mono sighed as she picked herself up and presented her swords to him before beginning to strip herself. Luckily, Lupus Regina stopped her. "Whoa. Whoa. Whoa. Hold the phone. What are you doing? And why are you stripping?" Mono tilted her head as if wondering what she did wrong. "Is this not how you present yourself when pledging to another? I was going to offer my body and abilities to him, so naturally it's only right that I allow him to see my body underneath these clothes." Top. Chop. Mono had 2 large bumps to the head by Lupus Regina. "That's not what you do. And where did you even hear that?" "I asked Lilia about it and she said that giving yourself to another and pledging to another person of the opposite is like a contract that can't be broken by ordinary laws. To quote my mentor who helped me with emotions, love is much stronger than magic." The other's sweat dropped at the comment and thought just who this person was and why she even said something like that. A certain mage in the Kingdom of Lions sneezed as she read a book of a man and woman enjoying their honeymoon. "I feel like someone is blaming me for something," Mono said. Issei stopped Mono, put her clothes back on before taking her back to the village so they could talk. Lupus and Jericho followed them to make sure the girl didn't try anything sneaky. Umbra and Salem were finally alone. Umbra took off her watch hat and the wind blew a gentle breeze which somehow enhanced her beauty. Salem was happy to see her lover after being departed for so long. Salem got down on one knee and blushed as she brought out a ring that had an amethyst on it instead of a diamond. Umbra was shocked by what she thought was gonna happen, but kept her mouth shut. Salem began as she looked at Umbra with red in her cheeks. "Umbra. Not a day goes by where I don't regret standing up and speaking up for you and telling the village that I was in love with you. My parents were okay with this, and I wanted to see you so badly that when my parents died, I was all alone and my heart aches terribly because you weren't here with me. I wanted to leave the village so badly so I could find you and tell you how I feel. So Umbra, would you do me the honor of being my wife and marrying me?" She blushed as she looked down at the ground, afraid of what Umbra would say, until her face was brought towards Umbra, who began to cry. "Why, yes. What took you so long to ask me?" Salem smiled as she put the ring in Umbra's ring finger and the two kissed in the grass. They released all of their pent-up emotions that they held in each other's heart for so long. Meliodas and the others watched the scene before them and the girls were crying their eyes out as they loved the confession of how it was like the ending of 2 reunited lovers. Issei smiled at Salem as she now found her happiness in this world. He looked at Mono, who was sleeping in his arms, before petting her head. "It looks like things are finally looking up for others." A few days later. The team had decided to attend the wedding and of course there were some who didn't approve of the marriage, but Salem and Umbra didn't care about the few. They still decided to give their vows, with Issei being asked to be the best man, and when the bouquet was tossed, Diane had caught it and blushed as she looked at King. The others snickered at the two before they packed up and prepared to head it to their next destination. There was a rumor that at the city of Basel, the grand prize for their fighting tournament would be one of the 7 deadly sin sacred treasures. So it was decided that they would head there to see whose it was. As they headed out, Issei took a look at the gems that were on the 3 necklaces that he had on him. He looked back at Mono, who was sleeping on his bed, and gently rubbed her head before smiling at the gems and polished them before heading to a deep sleep. "I hope I can see who you are in there." As he slept, Mono wrapped herself in his arms and enjoyed the warmth radiating from him and snuggled into his chest. "So warm, so sleep, thank you, Issei." She kissed his cheek and then went to sleep. Meanwhile, in the gems, 3 individuals were comforted by the warmth and fire from the one who carried them around and spoke to them, even though they couldn't reply back to him. One was a toned woman with long spiky orange hair. She wore no clothes, so instead she covered the breasts, left arm and right leg in her own darkness. She had demon markings on her left cheek which resembled a beast's open mouth with a circle in the center. The second one was a woman with a mixture of black and magenta hair that flowed to the middle of her back. She was as tall as Jericho and had a purple eye and a red eye. Her attire made her look as if she was royalty. Then finally, the last one was a girl who had purple eyes and long black hair and 2 side plates with chain pieces at the ends. She wore a red coat with a white diamond design, a black tight skirt and laced up white heeled boots. Next to her was a black rabbit that sniffed her before leaping into her arms. They enjoyed the feeling from their master and wished to break free one day. "Please wait for us, master. We will assist you soon enough, so please wait a bit longer. The tournament is gonna be insane. Find out what happens next time." Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Nefarious Doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.